And my favorite three favorite albums of all time. Oh man. Okay, so this is arbitrary actually. It's just like the first three that come into my head. I'd say like Wee Tam and the Big Huge by the Incredible String Band, 1968 if I'm not mistaken.
The Incredible String Band, sometimes abbreviated as ISB, were a British psychedelic folk band formed by Clive Palmer, Robin Williamson and Mike Heron in Edinburgh in 1966. The band built a considerable following, especially in the British counterculture, notably with their albums The 5,000 Spirits or The Layers of the Onion, The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter, and Wee Tam and the Big Huge. They became pioneers in psychedelic folk and, through integrating a wide variety of traditional music forms and instruments, in the development of world music. They recorded their first album, entitled The Incredible String Band, at the Sound Techniques studio in London in May 1966. It was released in Britain and the United States and consisted mostly of self-penned material in solo, duo and trio formats, showcasing their playing on a variety of instruments. It won the title of Folk Album of the Year in Melody Maker's annual poll, and in a 1968 Sing-Out magazine interview Bob Dylan praised the album's October song as one of his favorite songs of that period, stating it was quite good. In July, they released their second album, The 5,000 Spirits or The Layers of the Onion, accompanied by Pentangle's Danny Thompson on double bass and Licorice on vocals and percussion. The album demonstrated considerable musical development and a more unified ISB sound. It displayed their abilities as multi-instrumentalists and singer-songwriters, and gained them much wider acclaim. The album included Heron's The Hedgehog song, Williamson's First Girl I Love, later recorded by Judy Collins, Jackson Browne, Don Partridge and Whiz Jones, and his Mad Hatter song, which, with its mixture of musical styles, paved the way for the band's more extended forays into psychedelia. Enthusiastic reviews in the music press were accompanied by appearances at venues such as London's UFO Club, co-owned by Boyd, the Speakeasy Club, and Queen Elizabeth Hall. Their exposure on John Peel's Perfumed Garden radio show on the pirate ship Radio London and later on BBC's Top Gear made them favourites with the emerging UK underground audience. The album went to number 1 in the UK folk chart, and was named by Paul McCartney as one of his favourite records of that year. 1968 was the band's annus mirabilis with the release of their two most celebrated albums, The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter and the double LP Wee Tam and the Big Huge issued as two separate albums in the US. Hangman's reached the top 5 in the UK album charts soon after its release in March 1968, and was nominated for a Grammy in the US. Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin said his group found their way by playing Hangman's and following the instructions. A departure from the band's previous albums, the set relied heavily on a more layered production, with imaginative use of the then new multitrack recording techniques. The album featured a series of vividly dreamlike Williamson songs, such as the Minotaur song, a surreal music hall parody told from the point of view of the mythical beast, and its centerpiece was Heron's A Very Cellular song, a 13-minute reflection on life, love and amoebas, its complex structure incorporating a Bahamian spiritual I Bid You Good Night. Williamson and Heron in this album had added their girlfriends, Licorice McCartney and Rose Simpson, to the band to contribute additional vocals and various instruments, including organ, guitar and percussion. Despite their initially rudimentary skills, Simpson swiftly became a proficient bass guitarist, and some of McCartney's songs were recorded by the band. Their November 1968 album Wee Tam and the Big Huge, recorded before the US trip, was musically less experimental and lush than Hangman's but conceptually even more avant-garde, a full-on engagement with the themes of mythology, religion, awareness and identity. Williamson's otherworldly songs and vision dominate the album, though Heron's more grounded tracks are also among his very best. and the contrast between the two perspectives gives the record its uniquely dynamic interplay between a sensual experience of life and a quest for metaphysical meaning. The record was released as a double album and also simultaneously as 2 separate LPs, a strategy which lessened its impact on the charts. The artwork of the album The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter has been referenced on Current 93's album cover to their LP Earth Covers Earth, Devendra Banhart's Cripple Crow LP, and Feather's eponymous debut.
Scotland in general, and Edinburgh in particular, were epicenters of a kind of drug culture in the 60s, in which a lot of people smoked dope, a lot of people took acid, in a way that didn't exist in England in the folk scene. I mean, people smoked dope maybe, but there weren't too many mind-blown folk singers.
LSD then, most of it, I think, originated from psychiatric hospitals, the early stuff. It was in a sort of sugar cube form. And I remember when it had just really become available in Scotland. And we all tried it. Plus we tried everything, really. Romular, everything. We tried them all.
I had a tree in the dream hills where my childhood lay, and I'd go there in the wild long days, and my tree would listen to all that I'd say, and the sun was shining.
In the back room of a tiny pub in the back of Edinburgh somewhere, I heard the incredible string band. Robin and Clive were kind of distorting Scottish music, completely unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It was not like anything that was happening in America. And so it had this real freshness of something genuinely British, and echoes of, you know, Scots traditional music, but echoes of Eastern Europe, and echoes of William Blake, and echoes of God knows what in this thing. And they kept playing me more and more songs. They were all great.
Ravi Shankar would come every year. We'd have access to that, you know, and modern jazz records and Bulgarian records as well. And out of that whole mixture, we cobbled together a kind of music that we would like to hear.
It was totally free. Somebody singing and going, and you're thinking, wait a minute, there's no form here. And then you realise that that's what it is.
The ideas that I feel that I added to that mixture was the notion of trying to play instruments that you couldn't actually play at all, getting away from technique, like naive painting except with music. There's so many things in junk shops, you know, big gongs and things that come back from the British Raj, and bells and Tibetan chimes, and we just thought, I'll have a go with this, make a noise on that, clang on this, thump on that, squeak on the other.
An elephant madness has covered the sun, and the judge and the juries still play for the fun. They've torn all the roses, washed all the soap, and the martyr who marries them dares not elope.
I sort of took the incredible string band and said, no, we're not going into the folk scene at all, we're going over here. I think the same audience that's coming to hear Pink Floyd will come to hear Robin and Mike. It couldn't have been a more different world than the world of Upstairs at the Black Horse in terms of the audience. You know, but there were probably crossovers in the audience. Kids who started out listening to folk music, you know, getting their minds blown and going down to UFO and becoming Pink Floyd fans or Soft Machine fans.
Audiences were fairly open-minded, so that they'd let you play almost anything. You know, they listen to the incredible string band, and they tolerate, you know, 20 minutes between songs while the increds are trying to figure out which instrument they're going to play on which song.
I do think that a lot of what was done in those days was done on drugs.
The composer of life has arrived with his wife, as composed as a cup of tea.
Aldous Huxley. I read The Doors of Perception and I thought, this is the biggest lot of sense I've ever read in my life. There's nothing mystic about this. You know, page after page of right down to earth, factual. There it was.
In 1968, while the folk movement was busy hugging trees, out in the real world, Rome was burning.
The messenger with sharpened heels flew backwards into whose galloping.
Folk had travelled light years away from its 50s socialist roots.